The Payphone on 7th Street. There's a payphone outside an old convenience store in a dusty strip mall on Franklin Street, South Philadelphia. The locals call it the Whisper Line. There's a laundromat next door, an old-school pizza joint, and a pawn shop that hasn't changed since the 90s. But people don't come here for laundry, pizza, or pawned goods. They come to talk to the dead. I hadn't told my brother, James, about the phone until we reached Harrisburg. I didn't know how to explain it, driving all the way to Philly just to make a call to Mom. But after the past year, I felt like we had nothing to lose. James turned to me, his eyebrows raised in disbelief. "You want me to believe that there's a payphone that lets you talk to dead people? And you want me to do it?" I sighed, gripping the wheel tighter. "Look, I know it sounds ridiculous, but I need to try this. And I think you do too." He shook his head, staring out the window. "I thought we were just visiting her grave, not chasing after some weird urban legend. I thought you'd be willing to do anything to feel connected to her again." James had always been practical, the one who kept me grounded when I got caught up in my head. He's a numbers guy, a logical thinker. But Mom's death had shaken something in him, something neither of us could fix. And maybe, just maybe, this was a shot in the dark that could bring him a bit of peace. The drive was long, and most of the time we sat in silence, listening to the hum of the highway. Occasionally, James would mutter something under his breath about how absurd this whole idea was, but I knew he was hurting just as much as I was. Losing Mom had shattered him in ways I couldn't fully comprehend. She was his constant, the one who had guided him when our dad left. We pulled into South Philly late in the afternoon. The strip mall was smaller than I expected. And the payphone? It looked like it hadn't been used in years, rusted and weathered, the receiver hanging loosely by its cord. I turned to James, unsure of what to say now that we were here. "This is it?" he asked, his voice tight with frustration. "This is where you think we're going to what?" Hear Mom's voice again. I nodded. "I know it sounds crazy, but I heard stories. People say the phone works. You just pick it up and they'll hear you." James scoffed but didn't leave the car. That was a good sign. I opened the door, stepping out into the cool evening air. There was a faint breeze carrying the smell of pizza and city grime. I approached the phone, running my fingers over its chipped surface, trying to steel myself for what I was about to do. "James, are you coming?" I called over my shoulder. He didn't answer, but I heard the car door creak open behind me. He walked over slowly, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "All right, fine. But you go first." I lifted the receiver, pressing it against my ear. Silence. The kind of silence that presses on your chest. I took a deep breath. "Mom?" "It's me, Liz." Nothing. Just the soft crackle of static. I felt foolish. James was staring at me, his arms still crossed, his expression hard to read. "I miss you," I said softly, closing my eyes. I wish I knew what to do. Things have been so hard since you've been gone." Suddenly, the static on the line changed. It wasn't loud or clear, but it was there. A soft, distant hum, almost like a voice at the very edge of my hearing. I froze, my heart pounding. "Mom!" I whispered. The hum continued, shifting and warbling. It wasn't words exactly, but it felt like her. Her presence, her warmth. I felt tears sting my eyes. I couldn't explain it, but for the first time in months I didn't feel so alone. I hung up, my hands trembling as I turned to James. I think I heard something." James looked at me, eyes wide, his skepticism faltering for the first time. He walked past me to the phone, gripping the receiver like it might break apart if he wasn't careful. He hesitated, then put it to his ear. I watched him, waiting. His expression remained neutral at first, but then something shifted. His face softened and his eyes grew distant. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking. He stood there for what felt like forever, just listening. I didn't know what he was hearing, but I saw the tension slowly drain from his body. His shoulders relaxed, and for a moment I thought he might start crying. But James never cried. Not even at Mom's funeral. When he finally hung up, he stood there for a long time, staring at the ground. I didn't say anything, letting him process whatever had just happened. After a while, he turned to me. "She told me to take care of you," he said quietly. "She said I've been too hard on you." I felt a lump form in my throat. "She really said that?" James nodded, wiping at his eyes with the back of his hand. "Yeah, she did." We didn't talk much after that. We just stood there for a while, watching the sky turn from orange to deep purple as the sun set behind the city. Eventually, we got back in the car and drove home, the weight of grief a little lighter than before. Maybe the payphone was just a piece of junk, a relic of the past. Maybe the voices we heard were our own memories, our own hopes and wishes projected into the static. But for us, it didn't matter. For the first time in a long time, we felt connected to her again. And that was enough.